It's uh it's a big day for the world. It's a big day. And the question of what's going to happen? Is it going to be a disaster? Uh how horrible is this going to get or not? Is a perspective each individual is deciding for themselves right now. One thing I don't think the world needs is another one of those. I don't think the world needs another opinion about what's going to happen or what should happen or what the consequences will be of one thing happening versus another thing in terms of who gets elected. I don't think the world needs another opinion about this. And that gets me to thinking about George Washington and how George Washington got me to truth. And I wrote an article about this on the content page, which is up on Medium right now. And I wrote it yesterday. And it got me where I needed to get to understand how I feel about this, because I have very strong feelings about it. And I feel like what I know is based on fact. And I feel that what I am able to see clearly is based on a lifetime of noticing the world, politics, government, economics, and reality about how elections work, about how leadership works, about US history and global history, because I've been noticing it, paying attention to it an entire lifetime. And I feel like I know something about it, but I'm not going to share my opinions anymore because they're not useful. And that really leads to a bigger place. Is our opinions ever useful? Ever? What if no one ever shared their opinion? What kind of world would we live in? It would be incredible. Everything would be fine. And I thought, well, that's it. How George Washington got me to truth. If no one ever shared their opinions, the opinion projectors would have to turn themselves off. And then what? It's almost inconceivable for many people to realize this is actually possible. Is that my opinion? George Washington took a job he didn't want. And instead of building a monument to himself at Mount Vernon, like the Pope and the Catholic Church did in Vatican City, is that my opinion? To show the world how powerful they were. Be in awe of me. Is that my opinion? Or is that what happened? You decide. King Louis XIV in France. I've been to Versailles. The lines are really long. And it takes a long, long, long time to get through the chateau. Long time. There's a lot of stuff in there. For him, the sun in his mind of the Son of God in his mind. And I went to George Washington's house in Mount Vernon, and I thought, he could have done better. He could have had a bigger house. He could have probably had a house in Malibu on the beach next to one of the tech billionaires or whatever version of that was. He just wanted to farm and do his thing. Now you could say, well, he was terrible because he had slaves. Well, that's terrible. Yes. Yes. Slavery is terrible. We had slavery in the United States. Have you noticed? Do you know the history of the United States? Or do you just think of it as Black history and white history and this group's history and that group's history? No, we have American history and global history because there are a lot of different people here and they all have their own perspectives and stories about the history. That's the history, the perspectives and stories about the history. And then the observations of those stories by people trying to figure out what the hell are they talking about? Because it was a different time and the historian's not there. So they can't just tell their story. about what they're seeing, noticing. A more perfect union. That's what we want, right? How are we going to get there? I can't shut off your opinion projector. I can only shut off mine. I can't shut off the big opinion projectors. I can only shut off mine. I can only say, "Yeah, I don't care." I can listen to it, but after a while, I can't. I can't. I just can't listen to it anymore. What can I hear? People who know what they're talking about. People who know what they're talking about because they're saying, not this is my opinion. They're saying, after a lifetime, and I'm not talking about me, of covering US elections, I remember back in da 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 da, and I remember this one, and I remember that one, and I remember when it has happened with Obama, and I remember this happened with Trump, and I remember this happened with Clinton, and this is what we were talking about in the rooms, and then this happened. I want to hear that, and that's it. If you can't say that, shut up. Turn off your opinion projector and go in the audience. Now, who else gets to talk? Anybody who wants to talk. We live in a free, liberated country where we can say what we want to say. I'm saying this. There's countries where I could not say this. This is broadcast wherever any people are. It's global. We live in a global world, a global interconnected world. You want borders secured? Yeah, we have physical borders. They need to be secured. We're going to debate it. You ever been there? You got a lot of opinions about it. I've been across the border. I haven't hung out at the border for years. And if I've hung out at the border for years and I have a perspective on it, I could share that perspective. And that would be worthwhile because I have experience. If someone has been at the border for years and they say, here's what's going on at the border, I'm listening. When they go to their opinion, in other words, their judgment about what they're observing, I'm not listening anymore. I've checked out because I don't care. I don't know if you have a good judgment, sense of judgment or not. All I know is you're sharing your opinion instead of your observations, and I don't care anymore. I shut all that crap off years ago because it's nonsense. It doesn't mean anything. I don't know how this, I sort of know, but I'm not an expert in how crazy became normal. I remember when it happened though. And there's two themes. One is the entertainment industry getting into news. That was one theme. And the other theme was the money people figuring out how to make money from information. That was a problem. And I watched it happen. And I thought, oh, this isn't good. And it's not. Election day coverage, how George Washington got me to the truth. The more opinions, the less truth, because opinions are never true. They're just opinions. We used to know that. That's called common sense. Uncommon common sense, it's called now. It's very hard for me to stop sharing my opinions. It's an automatic reactive part of the mind. That's where opinions come from. Is that my opinion? I'm not a brain science expert. I don't know. What I do know is that for me, myself, my opinions come from my left brain thinking processor. It's scanning the environment. I know this because I pay attention to my inner workings and what I'm doing. I have my entire life. My left brain thinking processor is observing the environment, scanning everything. What is it doing? It's looking for flaws. What does it find? Flaws. Then what does it do? It believes them and says, well, that's real. That's its job. Its job is it's designed for that. My thinking processor brain is designed to look for flaws in the environment, scan around and say, oh, well, that's what's happening. Where does it go wrong? When I believe what it tells me. I'm not an expert in brain science. You can talk to them. A lot of them have a lot of opinions, though. Some of them have knowledge, and some of them have real experience. That I've noticed. Not all of them. Just because they have that credential doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. It does mean they have an opinion, though. When I watch my brain functioning, I know that if I believe what it tells me, I'm going in the wrong direction because that's not its job. If I allow it to do its job, I get to truth because I'm not listening to it and believing in what it is scanning around in the environment and telling me is happening as if all of those things were immutable laws and truths and principles and fundamental realities because they're not. Why? Because they're changing all the time. It can't be real because it's not, because it's always changing. If I look at the world from my left brain and I take a snapshot of it and say, got it, it's already outdated. It's an old picture. The world's already changed. Now, 20 years later, it's a sepia covered photograph that I'm still looking at and saying, well, how come it's not like that? It hasn't been like that for 20 years. You still think it's like that? I'm like, I do. You believed your opinion projector that told you this is what the world is. It's not true, but you still believe it. Well, how come it's not like that anymore? Because it's not. You believed in something that's not real. I do this all the time. We all do. That's how the brain works. How George Washington got me to truth. Sacrifice, valor. We talked about that today in the Invincibility Dojo with Brian Muka, and valor. And what is valor? And that's valor. To say, I have to do this thing. I don't want to. I'd rather just be a farmer. But to say, I have to do this. They couldn't get along. They had lived in different economies. They had different economies. One was based on slavery. The one George Washington was part of was based on slavery. It's not okay. I think he knew that, but he couldn't do anything about it. And he knew that too, because he lived in reality. He knew deep down inside himself, this is where we're at. A more perfect union will come. We're going to do the best we can with what we have right now. And that's what they did. And people are like, well, how come there weren't more women? How come there weren't more diversity? Well, look at the history. That'll answer the question. The snapshot of that is not real anymore. We live in a different place. It's a different time. They did the best they could. They did a lot. Unprecedented in history, what they did. Go to the north. John Adams. Manhattan was Dutch, open-minded. Manhattan was always open-minded. Dutch, trading, globalization. They were already there, the Dutch. The English weren't. Not at all. My way. Yankees. Boston. It's narrow-minded, but open at the same time. You decide. I'm just telling you my interpretation. I'm not a historian or an expert in it. I'm just interested. Think about it. John Adams, sacrifice, the stories, John and Abigail Adams and what they went through to do what they did. The sacrifices were unbelievable. It was hard all the time. Same with Thomas Jefferson. And they couldn't stand each other. They attacked each other. They tried to destroy each other, but they worked together anyways. Think about that. Think about that. They had journalism back then. They were called pamphleteers, and they trashed each other, and they didn't do it themselves. They had surrogates. It's like it works today. Oh, I didn't say it. I didn't say it. No, no, it had nothing to do with me. I didn't call John Adams that. Well, you did, Jefferson. You did. The people who work for you did. No, I looked the other way. I looked the other way. That's politics. That's politics. What's journalism? Telling the truth about the politics. We've got a guy by the name of Bob Woodward. You want to learn about American history? Just read all Bob Woodward's books. But then you got to read a little bit of James Baldwin too, and Isabel Wilkerson on Caste. You got to pay attention to that part of it too, to Ta-Nehisi Coates. There's a lot of books. There's good ones. We have incredible information. People say, I don't know what's true. Are you kidding me? You know how much information there is? That's not my opinion. There's good information everywhere. Always has been. Now there's more than there ever has ever been. It's amazing to me. Everything I want to know, I can find an answer by people who actually know what they're talking about. I don't look at the other stuff. Why would I want to hear your opinion? What happens today? Election day coverage. I don't know. I don't know, but I do know that a more perfect union is possible. And I do know that eventually the opinion projectors will die. And I hope it happens soon. I hope they turn themselves off. And you have a choice. You can be an opinion projector or you can turn yourself off. It's really simple. It's just to decide, I don't want this anymore. I don't want to create a life that I don't want to live in. I want to be the change I want to see in the world. That's all you have to do. And then say, what do I notice? What do I want? What kind of person do I want to be? What kind of business, entrepreneurial adventure do I want to go on? What kind of coaching product fits and suits me if I'm a coach? And that's what I want to do. What if I'm a service provider and I think, what am I good at? What do I really want to be delivering and spending my time on, and with who? You can decide that today, or project your opinions. I can decide that today. And I have. And I've decided I don't want to share any more opinions because they're not real. And what I want to share is only two things. One is, and this is hard, but I'm doing it. I'm doing it. It took me years to get to this because the opinions just come. And I'm like, shut up. Why did you say that? But I do, and I don't want to anymore. There's two things that are true in different ways, I've found. One is my experience is always true. I may be wrong, but my experience is right. I may be completely wrong, but it doesn't matter. It's true right now for me because it's what I experienced. I may be completely wrong. And the fact that I know I may be completely wrong is useful to know. That's called humility. To say, I'm not completely sure, but I know this is true. And if I know it's true, that's enough. I don't have to convince you. Why would I try to convince you? I already know. And I can be skeptical, but no, still. Than my experience. You can't take that away from me. I did that. I was there. I experienced that, either in an observation of the world or inner being experience, which is deeper. two flip sides of this. It's a coin, heads and tails. Heads is the world of observation and experience. We're out in it, we're looking around, and our mind is saying, "Oh, that's real, that's real, that's real," and it's bringing all this information in, and we're saying, "Oh, this is now, oh, I believe this. Here's my identity. Now I have my convictions. I'm going to go show everybody. I'm going to create a life around it." Yeah, you can live like that. So most people are living like this. It's just the world's that, yeah, the world's right here. That's it. That's it. That's it. Not paying any attention to themselves. They're just out in the world. Oh, this is real. This is real. That's fine. You can have a life like that, and there's no reason why many people won't. Most people will. That's how most people live. Whatever is in the world they see and say, "That's real." Just let it keep moving. Don't hold it and say, "Well, it's gotta be like this, and you gotta come along, because if you don't, everything's gonna be terrible." Well, how do you know? You're not in charge of it. How do I know why these things are happening the way they're happening? I have no idea. I just know what I know, and that's the world. Now, there's another part which I didn't know about until 2020. I mean, I knew, but I didn't really understand it because I hadn't had the experiences myself. But I'd read about it in books long enough, and I did a lot of practices and things where I thought I got it, but I didn't. And that's the inner world. That's the duality of conversation inside of, oh, there's something inside of me that's not just me, it's bigger than me. I hadn't experienced that until September 20th, 2020 at 5 AM when that happened to me. And it was a wake up, not woke, wake up. Waking up doesn't end. Waking up. There's no woke, I've found. Maybe you're woke. I'm not woke. It's waking, doesn't end. That's an inner expansion of awareness, self awareness. That's real, always. I know now from that experience as bedrock. That's what I pay attention to now, and the world, both at the same time. Imagine that. So I can look around at the world and say, oh, look at all this stuff going on out here. And then I can pay attention to myself, of what's going on inside me, and say, how do I feel about this? How do I think about this? What do I care about in relation to all that stuff that's going on all over the place out there? When these two things come together, heaven and earth unite. The inside and the outside calibrate and become the same. That takes a long time and a lot of letting go of things that aren't true. What are those? Opinions. Examining my opinions, my beliefs, and my convictions freed me to have the experience of outside and inside uniting. Without that, it wouldn't have happened. But I still project my opinions. I like, stop doing that. And then they weren't opinions anymore. It was just what I knew. And then I realized, oh, they think it's my opinion. Like, well, you're judging me. I'm like, I'm not judging you. Am I? I'm like, no, I'm really not. Like, you're judging yourself. Oh, they're projecting. And I thought, oh, they're projecting their opinion on me about themselves, and they think I'm the one doing it to them. I was like, oh, yeah, I spent my whole life like that, and I understand that. Oh, well, how do I solve that problem? That's a big problem. How do I solve that problem? Change the language. And we're working on that on this Entrepreneur Experience campus. It's not easy because we all have really strong perspectives, and it's the language. And I'm listening to somebody, and I'm like, yeah, that's true what you're saying, but it's going to trigger somebody else who isn't there with that because they have a strong belief about something, and they're going to project that when they get triggered. That's called being triggered. So I was part of some groups where they were really good at teaching us how to do that because everyone was triggered all the time. and it wouldn't work if you weren't, because the group couldn't come together. This is where we're at now as a country and a global society. It's the same thing, just bigger, a lot bigger, much more dangerous not to do it right. We did this in small groups and it worked. Bringing people together who could not agree on anything. Rabid Trump supporters, rabid progressive, woke, um, gonna change the world my way or the highway kind. Like the polar opposites and everything in between. People who ran companies, people who had been in prison, all races, and eventually genders. That was another thing I saw later. And I'm like, they're all the same. Everybody's the same. It's just confusion when you bring the opinions in because people get triggered. So this is what we're doing with entrepreneurs, coaches, and service providers. Keep the opinions out of it. It's very, very hard because they're there. People aren't conscious of their opinions. They're just saying what they think is true because they've observed it as true, but it's a snapshot from 20 years ago or something that happened when they were a kid and they're attached to it still. And it's their reality. You can't do that. You can't. I know, like, don't bust up somebody's belief systems and reality. They need it. When they're ready, they'll get there or not. That's completely up to them. And it's got nothing to do with me, but I'm triggering it by saying certain things. So it's like, how do you avoid this? It's very simple. My experience is, or I've noticed this. That's it. People don't speak like this in our society. Why not? I don't understand. I do understand because I didn't either. And I don't a lot of the time. And I'm learning. So we use you. Talking about me. I'm telling you a story using the word you or we. We do this or you do this. Who? You? Who's you? Who's we? There's no we. There's me. I'm the one talking. So when I say you should do this or well, we know that it's all about happiness, love, peace, and satisfaction, or we know it's all about struggle, effort, and challenge, making it happen. Who? Who? Who's we and who's you? You're talking about you. How do you get through this? Tell your story. Story, you mean like storytelling and branding and marketing, like my attractive character story? No, I mean your real story. Not embellished. That's worse. That's even more confusing. I'm just saying share your experience using language. I'm saying for me and our group, it's necessary. It's based on principles. It's not my opinion. I didn't create this stuff. I didn't figure out how the magnetic energy polarity works. I didn't figure out how notice works. I didn't figure out how self-awareness works. I just noticed it, went down the rabbit hole as deep as I could because it felt better. And what I was doing wasn't working for me anymore. That's it. And then said, what's going on here? This is better. How do I turn this into a company that works for me and other people? And George Washington got me to the truth on this, which is this was a lot harder than just trying to figure out how to make money, which is all I really wanted. I just wanted to make enough money where I didn't have to work anymore. And I had easier pathways, but they weren't easier because it wasn't where I'm supposed to end up. And I think that's the point for everyone. It's what is your destiny, not mine. My destiny's got nothing to do with you. It's yours, your destiny. What is your destiny? And that's why I say, don't copy me. Don't copy anybody. Do what feels right for you, but understand how life works. Life principles, laws, principles, and mechanisms have always worked. They're not temporary or based on the societal condition. They're always true. And when I look at election day coverage and how George Washington got me to the truth, this is what I'm paying attention to right now. And I'm very